Hey everybody, thanks for logging in. It is so good to be with you guys. I'm Joe, if we haven't had a chance to meet, one of the pastors here, and excited to dial in with you as we settle in for the weekend. There's a lot of stuff to cover. It's like headed into summertime, so everything from celebrating Feed My Starving Children, Grace Race, camps and trips, it's such a good time. We always try to make our summers really count here at Grace Church, and I hope you do as well. That's one of my favorite things. Now, speaking of summer and speaking of favorite things, I'm curious actually, are you getting away at all? Are you taking any staycations, vacations, travel? You taking any time off? Would love to know that. And honestly, like, shoot your tips over, right? Like, I wouldn't mind hearing those. I'm sure if you're in any comment threads, people wouldn't mind hearing and seeing what you're up to. Like, I enjoy getting to explore a little bit what other people have found. Like, so for instance, my wife and I, we're gonna try to do a little bit of a tour later this summer, like in August, up in New England. And so we're not even totally sure what we're getting ourselves into yet, but I love learning from other people. So for instance, if you've ever done a New England tour, a New England trip, we would seriously love to get those tips and must eats and must visits and must sees from you. That would be fantastic. But that's just us. Like, what are you up to and where are you headed, or what are you trying to get accomplished this summer? And then like, that's like the fun stuff, or that's like the, let's try to make sure we rest and relax a little bit over the summer stuff. But I also, like, summer is a fantastic time to get super intentional with relationships. Like, it's one of the weird benefits of living in Ohio, if you're from Ohio, is like, summer is like we're finally outside of our shells. We're finally getting out and hiking and getting on our bikes and doing all these different things. It's a wonderful time to connect with neighbors, and it's a great time to sit on patios, whether it's at your house or a restaurant. It's a fantastic time to get the kids together if you got kids, or to go on the dog walks. Like, find the people that you want to connect with this summer, and let's be intentional about it, right? Like, here at Grace, we're always talking about praying for your three people that we want to see experience the hope of Jesus in a fresh way, maybe even for the first time. Like, how can we be praying for them? And then how can we be asking God, give us a no-brainer moment to have great conversation, to maybe answer questions, to dive into that kind of stuff. I love the summertime for those reasons. And so maybe make that list. Like, even right now as you're prepping to get ready here for the weekend, that you would sit down and go, you know what, this person's on my mind, this person's on my heart, and I really want to just kind of be praying for them and be in their corner as I kind of map out our summers. And so there's that, right? All of us are doing that individually. I know even in my life group, where we got some really fun things happening this summer, some ways in which we can get out in the community, some ways that we can connect with each other, and then even ways that we can be, this is crazy talking in the early summer, but like even things that we're going to strategically do in the fall. And so it's just a fun time to do all that kind of stuff. And then as we kind of think about how can we be praying for each other, like, there's a lot of teams and camps happening all summer long. So whether they're the kid camps or the middle school camps, or it's conference for, it's the momentum for our high school students. We got lots of Go teams going out. I'm actually headed to Guatemala this summer, and so excited to serve down there with one of our newer partnerships. We got lots of those kind of things going on, but be praying for those. Be praying for the minds and the hearts of people. Like, I can't explain enough how important it is to be praying for those types of things, where our hearts are kind of like softened to hear what God has for us, to be molded by what He's doing, and then also that all of us can be active in other people's lives and kind of live out the way that Jesus calls us to love each other in all of those unique environments. So love that stuff. And, check out some of those deadlines, because maybe you can jump in on some of that stuff before it's all said and done. And even if you miss an opportunity, make sure you mark that down for next year, for you or the loved ones in your life. So back to summary stuff, like I'm also very, very curious, like what's your favorite thing to like indulge? Do you have like a favorite ice cream place, favorite thing to grill out? Again, I think these are the ways that we kind of like share life a little bit with each other in a unique way, because growing up, I always thought grilling out meant you eat super dry hockey pucks on a hamburger bun, and that was terrible, and I thought that that's what it meant to grill out though. But as I've gotten a little bit older, I'm like, wait a minute, that can actually be a good thing and helpful and delicious foods. And so share some of those tips and secrets and some of your favorite go-tos as well. And maybe some people will be inspired to take it up a notch in that part of their life too. Now, as we're kind of dialing in here, getting ready to head into our weekend service, we're kind of spending a huge chunk of our summer answering questions, right? Like, what are some of the things that are on the forefront of our minds that are like kind of eating at our heart sometimes? And maybe it's not even the questions that you and I would have, but our friends and our neighbors and our coworkers and the people that we go to school with, the things that they're asking, the things that they're longing for. How can we seek God and find some of those things in the scriptures? So if there's something in particular that you have a question for, I actually want to briefly mention our Mixed Messages podcast. And so we have a podcast that drops an episode just about every week where we answer different and hard to engage questions. Pastor Jeff and I sit down and walk through all these different things. You can always submit a question there. If you hit up our website at bath.gracechurches.org/mixedmessages, you can fill out a quick form, and we'd love to get to those questions as well. But we're answering a lot of that over the summer too, and so I'm praying that God kind of continues to assure us that He's got us, and He continues to assure us that He is our foundation, and the more and more we see who He is and what He's doing, the more and more we trust and have our faith placed in Him, because Jesus is always the best thing for our lives. He's amazing. Love it, love it, love it. All right, well, I hope you're settling in. Make sure you got that ice cold glass of sweet tea or lemonade, or maybe it's a cup of coffee or something. Let's try to get those distractions away, and let's really dial in. What does God have for us as we jump inside here with our weekend service? It's great hanging out with you. We'll see you soon.
What's up, Grace Church family? It's Steven. It's so good to see you guys. We're here at the 13th annual Grace Race. We're going to go ask some people a bunch of questions. Come on, let's go. What has been your favorite part so far about the Grace Race?
It's the people, man. You're just being a part of this and being surrounded by like-minded people that want to help starving children.
Why is the Grace Race the best place to be right now?
Probably because you could get a free banana.
Hello, Minions. We're going to do an in-game interview here, Mark. How you feeling about this race so far?
Amazing, amazing.
So what is like the best part of today so far that you've seen out there? What's the best character? What do you got?
Oh, just all the participation, the crowd support, all of it's incredible. I love it.
We're out here feeding starving kids, enjoying it, and seeing a bunch of Minions. What else could you want? What else could you want? Well, Grace families, it has been awesome being here at the 13th annual Grace Race. It's been the best one so far. We are super excited. We're going to go check out Feed My Starving Children here. All right, see ya.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to Lunch Lady Vinny on the Street. We're here at Feed My Starving Children. We're going to go around, check out how everything's going. Let's do it. Come on. What made you want to come out and serve today?
Because I wanted to feed starving children.
That's awesome. You got the heart for that?
Yep.
Pop quiz. What are the 4 ingredients we got here?
Vitamins, vegetables, soy, and rice.
Wow, passing grade. I don't think I could have done that. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much fun are you having?
10. 9. 9.
How much food do you want to pack? How many meals?
Boxes.
10 boxes?
I got 5.
You guys are already, so you guys are like halfway there.
Yep.
Is this your first time at Feed My Starving Children?
My second.
Okay.
Last year.
All right. So last year, did you have someone like this good looking interviewing you?
No.
In your face, John Gressack. Leave this in. I want him to know I'm best. Why did you want to serve today?
Just felt like feeding some kids and being with our life group.
Good for you, man. Which life group are you here with?
The Smith Life Group.
Smith Life Group. Shout out. You guys are awesome. Really glad you guys are here today, and you're doing an awesome job with that tape. You're putting up Hall of Fame numbers. Do your thing. All right, everyone. Well, that's what's going on here today. Everyone's working really hard. We got a ton of people out here packing meals for these kids. It's amazing. Thank you so much for everyone that showed up. Thank you so much for everyone that kept this in your prayers. We appreciate you, and we're excited to see you next year. Lunch Lady Vinny out.
Hey, everybody. Can we just talk about how Vinny's the worst? Like, that guy's a jerk. I would have encouraged and said how I'm better than him in a subtle way. Anyway, guys, thanks for coming. My name's John, if you didn't pick that up from the very mean video. Did anybody see themselves in the video? Was anybody in there? Any celebrities in here? No, just me? I rule? Okay, that's fine. No, but it was great. We had a great time. It was one of the best things that we do here. Team Athena Mayhem over here, they absolutely killed it. Let's hear it for them, everybody. Nice. It was pretty awesome. We had a great time, and as a church, it is one of the best things we do. We come together, and we can serve the community, the world, as Grace Church in one place. And so you guys are awesome if you participated in that. If you missed it this year, you really did miss something awesome. So we have a couple cool things I want to tell you guys, right? Now, if you look around, you're like, oh, man, this is church. That's great. There's a couple of us in here. There's probably like 3 because the weather's nice, but that's okay. I don't count good. But at Feed My Starving Children, the packing event, we had 1,849 volunteers come through. That is phenomenal, right? So we had people who weren't part of the church. We had people who were part of the church, and everybody was helping feed starving children. We packed 537,192 meals for kids all over the world. That is so awesome. And that is 1,471 kids that are going to eat for an entire year because you guys actually stepped up. Not that I didn't think you could, but because you guys actually did it. No, you guys stepped up and you did awesome. And we appreciate it, and those kids appreciate it. So give yourselves a round of applause. You guys deserve it. You are all amazing. So thank you so much for that. If you missed it this year, there's definitely next year. It's going to be awesome. But if you're like, how did I miss this thing? It's because we have all of our cool stuff on the weekly. So you're going to want to check that out. It's this QR code up there. It's the QR code on the seats. If you miss it, scan it. If you're like, hey, is something else cool going to happen? Scan it, see what happens. We've got like Discovery Group in there. We've got all kinds of other like fun classes and things going on. I think there's actually a gaming group happening tonight. So if you're like, there's a gaming group here? Yeah, there's a gaming group here. So you can check that out. All of that stuff is up there. So make sure that that's a great way to get plugged in by scanning that. And we have another thing coming up here. It's a while away still. It's in the fall. But we have our men's retreat coming up, and that is something that is super fun. Obviously, it's for men, right? So the men can come together, and we can learn and grow and have a great time and kind of expose some of those things that we don't really talk about outside of church, right? So I know you're like, oh, dude, that's all the way in the fall. I'm not going to worry about that. Well, summer comes super quick, right? We're all like, right now it's the beginning of summer. Yay, school's out. And then before you know it, we're like, oh, it's October. All right, that's fun, right? So this is going to be right around the corner. So if you're a man in the room or if you know a man in the room, well, not if you know a man elsewhere, but you're also in the room. There we go. You don't have to know a man in the room. Hey, whatever. I'm going to walk away. Check out this cool video and see what the men's retreat is all about.
Like, there's not a lot of moments that I get where I'm actually able to sign out of life, whether it's jobs or family responsibilities or whatever it is. Like, I'm generally always on. One of the things you hear throughout the retreat is like, trust the process. And there's kind of like 2 different parts to it. One part is there are obviously sessions where we're getting to like dig deep into content and engage our hearts and maybe like change some ways we think. The other side of it is some of it's just fun, and it's like camaraderie and brotherhood, and it's playing paintball and riding horses or doing a service project or going on a hike or throwing axes.
Playing catch, we were just guys being dudes kind of stuff and kind of building those intergenerational relationships. There's never been a group easier to talk to than these guys.
There's just so many cool conversations that come out in those spaces where
you're just hanging out, you're watching the fire, and somebody shares, and we're able to start kind of digging back and forth to kind of understand, and for people to say, hey, I get what you're going through.
The sessions and the speakers and the facilitators like really do a good job of digging in and helping us to look at things that we've read a million times and look at them totally differently.
It really helped me to realize that I had a deep wound in me and almost like a lie that I had to kind of work out.
I always felt like I was seeking worth from a whole bunch of different places, and I didn't feel like I had a whole bunch of value, and so I would go seek that out almost anywhere I could find it. But out of Christ's love for me, I can just be his kid, and out of that joy comes the outflow of everything else, and the joy of being in the church and being with other men and serving, instead of the other way around.
A big part of my testimony, a big part of growing up is like viewing Jesus as almost like a probation officer or someone proctoring the exam, being in the sessions and hearing who Jesus is and what Wild at Heart means really helps one understand the father-son relationship that we have, you know, and who I've been made as a son and what that means.
Like one of the things I think we hear throughout the weekend is the idea that like men aren't islands, we're made to be connected, right? We're not the solo warrior that we want to be. In fact, we're actually made to like run as a pack.
Out of the retreat, me and actually a couple guys from my cabin, we ended up actually continuing to want to pursue Christ and maintain that ongoing relationship together. And we just encourage each other in the Word, encourage each other to pursue Christ individually. And it's just really been nice to form new relationships with guys I had never actually met before and now meet every single week.
If we're running solo in life, we're an easy target. And to be able to let other guys know that they're not alone and that we're in this thing together, I think it's just one of the coolest things about the men's retreat.
Well, if you guys haven't picked up on it, that men's retreat is truly a life-changing event. It truly is. It's done a lot in my life personally, and I hope that it can do that. That time can be used by God in your life as well. So please make that a priority. Check out those dates. You might have to call off a day of work or make some arrangements and start talking about it. But do it. You won't regret it. It's absolutely a blast. So there's lots of different things to get involved in around Grace Church, but for now, we have this great service planned. Why don't we go ahead and stand together, and we're going to sing a few songs, just pointing our hearts and our minds to Jesus Christ, our only hope.
Don't give up, there Hey there, everyone. Welcome out to Grace. And if you're tuning in online or you're watching over at Montrose, thanks for being together that way. Just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page. Last week, we announced that our family is going to be moving to Columbus to plant a church. And so if you missed last week, I encourage you to check out the video that me and my wife, Sarah, shot with Pastor Jeff, and we kind of shared our hearts a little bit with that and announced that transition. But there's a lot behind it, and it's all like good. God just calling us to a church planting opportunity down there. And we've been here at Grace for 8 years and just have absolutely loved that time and the family that Grace has become to us. And so it's really difficult to leave. But would love to share more about that. But this weekend, we're here to talk about this series that we're in. And so if you want to chat with me about that later, would love to. And especially if we've never met before, my name is Josh. And I would love to talk with you. Maybe you know people in Columbus, or you came from there, and I would greatly benefit from that knowledge. We've been in this series called Spiritual Questions We All Ask. And so we've been in this for a couple weeks, and there have been some big questions that we have taken on together. And so the first week we talked about what salvation is and kind of the nuances of faith and different ways that gets kicked around a little bit, and what the Bible teaches about what Jesus claimed. And then also the next week we talked about hell, which is a fun topic, and how can a loving God send people to hell? And so Pastor Jeff spent that week answering that question. And then last week, Pastor Joe was sharing a little bit about how can we know God is good when life isn't always good. And so these have been big questions. Maybe these are questions you've asked or you've wanted to ask and been afraid to. And I would encourage you to check those all out online or on the podcast or on the app and engage that conversation. And this week is also going to be a fun one. And what we're going to talk about this week, the question we're going to try to answer is this one. It says, what's wrong with religion? Which is an ironic question for a pastor to ask at a church. What's wrong with religion? And we're going to dive into this a little bit today. And for most of us in the room, this may not be something that we probably ask that way, or maybe a thought that pops into our head because maybe you view yourself as religious, or at least maybe you would say spiritual, like you're here at a church service, you're tuning in online, and so this maybe isn't as pressing as a question. You know, when you survey religious people across the entire world, first of all, did you know there are 4,200 religions? Yeah, you have a lot of options. Just kidding. No, 4,200 religions, about 76% of the world falls into 5 of them, kind of the big 5, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Hindu, and Judaism. And so those are the big 5. That's 76% of the world. So the other 4,195 are 8%. And then there's about 16% of our world that is non-religious. They're secular, they're atheist, they're agnostic, no religion. And so that's actually probably the group of people who ask this question a lot. Or maybe they have answers to it, and maybe they've shared them with you as someone who is spiritual, someone who's religious. And I have friends like this, friends who wouldn't ascribe to any faith, maybe identify as agnostic. And it's amazing that actually that's an increasing group of people, kind of, especially in the United States. About 15 years ago, only about 15% of Americans would have identified as non-religious or secular, atheist, or agnostic. It's about twice as many today. About 3 out of 10 people fall into this category of non-religious. They even, statisticians have been calling this group the nuns, not Catholic nuns, N-O-N-E-S, nuns. They don't ascribe to anything. And sometimes that's because truly there's a disbelief in God, and sometimes it's just walking away from a certain label and brand of faith. And so something's going on kind of in our world and in our culture that there is a huge pushback against religion. I think there's actually some valid reason for that, and we're going to try to unpack this a little bit today. But I just want to kind of tip my hat a little bit and let you know a couple of things today that are not my goals. Okay, first of all, it is not my goal to try to justify or explain everything that has been done wrong in the name of religion. Okay, it's there. You Google it, there's horrific things that have happened. It's not even just Christianity. There have been horrible things that have been done in the name of religion, and there still are. We're not going to try to explain that stuff away. It's there. I also want you to know that one of my goals is not to get you to agree 100% with my religion or for you to become this radical Grace churchgoer. I mean, in a month, I'm not even going to be here. So you can trust me. I have like no ill intention of that kind of bend. I truly hope what we can do today, like my goal would be to introduce you to who Jesus really is. That you would see he's actually different from probably what you would expect when you think of religion. And that if you could see that clearly, that it'd actually compel you. Like there'd be something like attractive about it. That would be like what I'm hoping happens this weekend. And to see just that he's different. Especially if you fall into that category of the nun. Like you don't want to attach onto one certain brand or label, or even you fall into that category of saying, hey, I would ascribe to being agnostic or an atheist. I know that probably everything I say won't satisfy all your questions, but I kind of want to look at an instance in the Bible where the early followers of Jesus, there was this guy named Paul, and he went to Athens in Greece, and Athens was filled with all these philosophers, people who didn't necessarily ascribe to any one thing, but they had kind of shrines set up for every god. Like they were like collecting them, and they were like, we're going to debate all of this. And they would talk all day, these philosophers, these Stoics and these Epicureans, and they would debate beliefs, values, what's truth, and philosophy and reason. And one of the earlier followers of Jesus, Paul, he went to interact with them and tell them about Jesus. And this is what he found interesting. He went and he spoke with them, and he says this. He says, men of Athens, I notice that you are very religious in every way, which feels like a four-letter word to someone who's agnostic or atheist. But they would have been like, yeah, we actually are. Like, we are searching this out intently. And he said, I was walking along, and I saw your many shrines. But one of the altars you had, it had this inscription on it, to an unknown God. This God, whom you worship without knowing, is the one I'm telling you about. I think that our culture and many people are actually more hungry to know what they should believe and what they should value. Like people are interested in spiritual things. We just don't quite know where to find it. And so maybe we feel like we have to pick and choose from things or just debate it all. What Paul's heart was is actually, I think that there's a God that you don't know. In fact, you've even already made an altar to him and you've been looking for him. And what I just want to try to offer this weekend is I think that person is Jesus. That's who Paul thought it was. And he's going to be different from every other kind of a religion or what you expect. And I hope to kind of display that. And so if we could just kind of have an open mind and maybe invite, okay, maybe I don't really know who Jesus is. That we would be able to do that this weekend. Sound good? You kind of have to be okay with it because you're here now. All right. So this is going to be the path we kind of walk through today. We're going to define religion and what actually we all have in common, everyone listening. And then we're going to address kind of two, what I'll say are valid concerns about religion. The two concerns I hear most often when that question is asked, or when someone's like, what's wrong with religion? What's wrong with Christianity? And then where I want to land us and spend most of our time is the three ways that Jesus came to offer something different from religion. So we're going to dive into that. Let's define what religion is. If you look at kind of all world religions, like what do they have in common? What makes up a religion? Here's just a little definition I came up with. These are, I think, the components of it. Religion is beliefs about God and the universe that shape how we live. That's what religion is, just beliefs about God and the universe that shape how we live. So beliefs are just the core convictions, the principles, the ideas, the things that we say, this is what's true. This is what's trustworthy. This is what I know. And then to base that in a way that you create your worldview. Like, how do you view why we're here and what we're supposed to be doing and what makes sense of all this, what it means to be human, and even who God is. So 76 plus 8% of the world says there is a God of some sorts. 16% would say, not so sure. Even if you don't believe there's a God, you still have a belief about that. And so that's a little bit of this, is these ideas and principles that shape our worldview, whether we believe there's a God or not, and they shape how we live. This is what begins to form our values, our habits, our practices, our rituals, our rhythms, even our relationships, like who we view as our tribe, right? And even what we spout as like the most important thing, what we share with other people, the thing we post, the mantras we keep, the things that inspire us. That like this is the makings of religion. Beliefs about God and the universe that shape how we live. Now, this is what's interesting. Here's what we all have in common. Every person has beliefs about God and the universe that shape how we live, right? Okay, so even if you ascribe as non-religious, in some ways you still fall into this category because we are people who have to figure out what we believe and value. Everyone tries to figure out how to attach it. Even if you don't label yourself with a certain religion, we all try to find a way to make it sticky, right? Like whether that's with an actual bumper sticker or a flag or a sign or some kind of brand. Like we're trying to find our team, our tribe. And I had a huge issue with this with my oldest son, right? I posted this on social media the other day. My son got some hand-me-downs, and it's Steelers gear. And he's just like, Dad, I love the Steelers. And I'm like, you don't know anything about the Steelers. And I was like, you're going to get in so much trouble because we live in Browns territory. And he's like, oh, this will make people upset. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, I'm going to cheer for them even harder. And I'm like, oh, no. So I'm like, please help. I don't really care. I mean, I'm from West Virginia. We didn't even have sports. So, yeah, trying to, like, get him to, he's, like, associating himself, probably not even with the Steelers, but the fact that he's going to upset everyone in the room. So, yeah, we kind of naturally drift into, like, identifying ourselves in these camps under these teams. And even if you view yourself as non-religious, because we can't disprove the existence of God. Just like I can't prove the existence of God. That's not what's going to happen today. I'm going to prove the existence of God. But you're also not going to disprove the existence of God. Charles Taylor was a Canadian philosopher, and he wrote a book called A Secular Age, noticing a lot of people moving away from religion. This is what he said about that. He said, secular belief isn't the absence of belief. It's adopting a new set of beliefs. Even secularism has beliefs about rationality and morality that are unprovable. You cannot prove to me why we should have human rights, but we all think there should be. You can't prove to me why it's important that we love each other, but even if you don't believe in a God, we want to be good people. We want to be loving people. Why? It's just not provable. And so that doesn't mean we're stuck. That doesn't mean this is a pointless conversation. What it means is that instead of saying someone's right and someone's wrong because it's provable, we have to compare. We kind of have to compare what maybe someone's saying or what a belief system says, and we need to compare it with other beliefs. And that's a lot of work. Actually, the late Tim Keller, he did a podcast on this called Question Christianity. You should check it out sometime. But his whole premise is that, as we compare belief systems, you need to look for two things. You need to look for what is most consistent. So a belief system that is consistent within itself. It doesn't have to say one thing but then live a different way. And then one that's livable, one that's functional, like beliefs that actually play out in real life. And so he kind of goes into all that. I encourage you to check it out. But that's what you have to do. We're going to have to believe something. It's going to shape how you live. Whether you believe there's a God or not, what your worldview ends up being. This is a huge part of all of our lives because we are all trying to satisfy this question of what's true and what we believe. We're trying to answer questions like meaning and identity and purpose and happiness. And we got to answer really hard questions too, like suffering and justice and hope. Like what can provide the answers and clarity for that? So if every person has beliefs, what's the problem with religion? Well, I'm glad you asked. Here's what as I interact with my friends who don't identify with Christianity and have a lot of reservations about it, these are kind of the main things I usually hear. The first one I hear is that religion is harmful and dangerous. Religion is harmful and dangerous. And there is plenty of history to back that up in the sense that we have seen people in the name of religion do horrible things. We've seen abuse happen, sexual abuse happen with women, children. We know that that's been covered up we know that there's been hiding of that, right? You can, it's coming out a lot more. That people have actually protected their leaders instead of protecting the vulnerable. We know that religion has motivated people to dehumanize other groups of people and to commit genocide. You look at examples like the Crusades, you look at colonization, you look at the Holocaust. In the name of beliefs, in the name of religion, people have been dehumanized. They've been killed because they don't ascribe to a certain belief. That terrorism, the radicalization of religion, and that's just not one particular religion or one particular group. It happens outside of our country, it happens inside of our country, it happens in Christianity, it happens in other religions, it happens everywhere. The radicalization of religion. We see that power and wealth structures are created to allow this kind of stuff to happen. We see that fear and suppression are what people end up experiencing sometimes in the name of religion. And that's all very real. Another part of this, with that idea, those wealth and power structures, religion isn't just dangerous and harmful. The other thing I hear is that organized religion cannot be trusted. Organized religion is the church dropouts four-letter word. They're like, organized religion. It's this thing you don't want to be a part of. Because many people, maybe who were religious at one point, who went to a church, they saw their faith become institutionalized. They felt neglected, used, abused, confused in their faith, like they left more hurt than when they came in. There's categories in religion today like celebrity pastors and narcissism and the politicalization of faith that the early followers of Jesus wouldn't even have had categories for. There's just straight up hypocrisy in religion. Preaching one thing and practicing something totally different. Lying, backstabbing, a lack of transparency, the suppression of truth, demanding blind loyalty. Don't ask questions, just follow. All of this is kind of being summed up in a phrase we call now church hurt. I had this faith, I came in with it, and then this organized religion ruined it for me. They hurt me. They confused me in my faith, and people leave the church for that reason, and they don't know where to go. In fact, like some of my friends who wouldn't walk away from Jesus, they would say, I still love Jesus, but I'm done with the church. I'm done with organized religion. I can't trust it anymore. And so I think that those, again, I told you up front, I think those reasons can be valid. I'm not going to try to justify your experience or the horrible things that have been done in history in the name of religion. But I think that we do need to ask ourselves the question, is that who Jesus really is? Is what people are doing in the name of religion, or what an organization or a leader did to you, is that who Jesus is? Because as I dive into this conversation, where I want to take us next is that he is very different from what you would expect when you think about religion. The things that we're talking about, you see here, that maybe would be hurdles for you to get over, I want you to see today that Jesus isn't anything like that. In fact, actually, fun, he pushed back against the religion of his day in some pretty hard ways, right? So Jesus shows up, he's Jewish, and he interacts with the leaders of his day, kind of the organized religion of the day, right? And kind of what they're about. This is what Jesus says when he's speaking to them. In Matthew 23, he says, the teachers of the religious law and the Pharisees are the official interpreters of the law of Moses. They lead the religion on how it goes, and they take God's word and navigate that. So practice and obey whatever they tell you, but don't follow their example. For they don't practice what they teach. They crush people with unbearable religious demands and never lift a finger to ease the burden. Jesus had a huge problem with the religion, particularly the religious leaders of his day. And it wasn't because he thought that the words of God they were using were wrong. He thought they were using it against people. He said, no, you should listen to how they interpret the law, but don't live how they live. They are not living in alignment with God's heart and mind. And so he's like, I'm here to show you what that's all about. But don't be like them. Be real careful of being like them, because it's unbearable religious demands, and they're never going to free you. They're just going to push religion on you. And if you ever get stuck in those places, go read Matthew 23. He just like goes on a long rant against the religious leaders. They call it the 7 woes of religious leaders. It's super fun. You'll enjoy it. And then another place where Jesus is talking about what he's about and his teaching. He says, don't misunderstand why I've come. I didn't come to get rid of the law of Moses. I didn't come to like erase what we know to be true about God or the writings of the prophets. I came to accomplish their purpose. I'm here to bring clarity. But I warn you, unless your righteousness is better than the righteousness of the teachers of religious law and the Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. They're missing it, guys. Like this religion that everyone thinks they have pat down, like Jesus is saying, you have wandered so far from the heart of God. And I'm here to bring clarity about that, but unless you're different than these religious leaders, not just better as in more religious people, unless you actually figure out what God's inviting you into, you're going to miss it. You're not going to find the kingdom of God. You're not going to find what I'm offering you. And so Jesus pushed back hard against the religion of his day. And so if you've ever wondered, is Jesus super religious? He seemed to at least have some concerns. It's not who Jesus is. He's not creating the next religion per se. He saw how people were using religion to harm and oppress others, and he pushed back against it. And it caused the religious leaders to hate him, want to get rid of him, to work for his execution, and the religiously prominent saw him as someone to get out of the way. I think it's important that we hear Jesus correctly, because the big problem is when we start to hear Jesus as religion. And we start to attach all these things to him because of my pastor was this way, because this church was that way, because of all these things that happened in history, because of that faith tradition, because religion does this, because that person has that sign in their yard, because that person protested this. We start to attach all these things to Jesus, and Jesus might be saying, actually, I'm none of that. And so again, back to this idea of the unknown God. Would you let me introduce you to some of the core things that I believe are important to revealing how Jesus is different from religion? I think there's 3 things we have to see that are important to contrast and say like, okay, Jesus is doing something totally different than what religion typically does. And so I'm going to walk you through these 3 things. Know that I have a couple parts of the Bible to kind of like show how Jesus spoke about this or how people understood what he was saying. And so if that overwhelms you, just ignore it or save the references and check it out more later. But how is Jesus different from religion? Here's the first way I think he's different. So Jesus did not come to take away your life. He came to give you true life. He didn't come to take away your life. Okay, this was like my number one concern when I was navigating Jesus. So I grew up very saturated in Christianity and different faith traditions of Christianity. I grew up going to private school my whole life and going to church my whole life. And so for kind of like my early years, I grew up going to a Methodist church. I went to a Catholic school, so very formal, very traditional. And then kind of older in my childhood, I went to a Nazarene church, and I went to a fundamentalist Baptist school. And so I was super delightful by the time I got through my childhood years. Like, it was great. Very confused. But one thing I knew that everyone had in common, and all the religion I was experiencing, is that it wasn't going to be fun. Being a part of religion means giving up fun. And you want to know what my fun was? I was a rock drummer, and I was so good. I like got this drum set in 9th grade, and what I wanted to spend my life doing was playing rock and metal music. I would listen to Metallica in my room, and I would if you're a drummer, you got this double kick pedal, so I could just be loud and have the speed. And I remember being a part of some churches that drums were viewed as like demonic. It was like, no, you cannot like let drums in the church. And I was like, oh, I didn't know like this thing that I was doing was wicked by drumming. I can't believe I'm even this close to a drum set right now. Like, oh, I could like fall over in a second. Or even like my neighbor, you know, when we met her, we were trying to get to know her, and we're like, yeah, we'll be having some like bonfires. We'd love for you to come over. And she's like, well, I would come over if you'd let me bring wine, but I know you're a Christian, so you know, I certainly couldn't do that. I'm like, well, I don't know if we'd have a problem with that. So there's this perception that, hey, by being religious means you got to give up all your fun. Like that's what Jesus' goal is. He's here to be like, I'm the party killer, and I'm here to tell you all the things you can't do and all the rules. That was at least maybe the perception I've had, and I think that some people think about being religious. But what Jesus does is he actually shows that he's not here to kill the party. Jesus is here to give you life. Like what Jesus comes to offer, people saw as good. They're like, whoa, Jesus, I've never heard anyone offer something like this. Can you actually deliver on it? The kinds of things Jesus would say was like this. He would say, my purpose is to give my followers a rich and satisfying life. If you follow me, he uses the word my sheep, then you're going to see how good it is because I'm going to give you the real life. I'm going to lay my life down so that you can experience life. In John 14, he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Like what I come to offer you is direction and clarity and goodness. And even as you read, these are all from the book of John. So even as you just read this book and you see how Jesus talks about the life he wants to get, you get to the end of the book. And almost to clarify, like if you think the Bible's all about rules and all the fun that gets killed by Jesus, the end of the book says that by believing in Jesus, you will have life by the power of his name. It's like, just in case you missed it, just in case you got to the end of the book and you're like, oh, that seems like a lot of stuff I got to do. It's like, don't miss it. Because all this has been written down so that if you would believe who Jesus is, you would find life. And it would be good. It would be so good. And that's what we're all trying to do. We're all trying to like find the best life we can. And Jesus is saying, I want to offer that to you, but if it's always on your terms and not mine, you're going to miss the life I want to give you. And it may not look the way you expect. But Jesus is very clear. The thing I came to offer you is life. Not just physical life, abundant, full life. His early followers picked up on this. They would say, the old person is gone, the new person is here. My new life has arrived, and it's good. They didn't see themselves as having all the fun taken away, the life being taken away from them. And that's been my experience. Like being a pastor is hard, but following Jesus is good. Following Jesus is so good. So that's the first thing. The second thing I wrote down was this. Jesus wants an all-of-life relationship, not just your religion. So this one may feel like a little bit more than what you bargained for with Jesus, but often when we think of religion, we think like, okay, maybe I have to start going to church on Sunday, right? Maybe, is that like the end goal of what God wants? It's like you came this week or you're watching online, you're like, oh, I got to get to church next week. That's what God really wants from me. He wants me to be there on Sunday. He wants me to become more spiritual. So I got to like know a Bible verse. I got to pray more. We start to leave things kind of in this category of religion or the spiritual and say that part of my life, God just wants me to have more of it. He wants me to be more spiritual. He wants me to be more religious. And that looks like coming to church or having an inspirational quote on my mirror, or having meditation in the morning or something like that. I think that while those things can do something in us, that's certainly not like what Jesus came to offer. And a lot of people are interested in spiritual things. We're trying to find things that can maybe like help or answer questions or like tap into the spiritual part of our life. And some of that is really interesting. But Jesus didn't come to just offer an inspirational add-on. He didn't just come to like be the energy you've been missing. In fact, he's probably asking way more of you than you initially expect. He's asking for all of your life. He doesn't just view the religious part or the spiritual part of your life. He like wants all of it. He cares about your relationships. He cares about your job and your money. He cares about your friends. He cares about your kids. He cares about your pain. He cares about your sadness. He cares about your dreams. He cares about what you hope would happen in life. See, I think what's interesting is that when we only leave religion in a small category of our life, we kind of put God in a box. Imagine it this way, right? So I got 3 kids, and let's imagine my oldest son. The only part of his life I care about is what happens in his room. Okay, so you know what? If he keeps his room clean, if he picks up the books, he snores really loud at night, just so I can get that out there, and be like, you snore bad, like we got to fix this snoring problem, and like the only part of his life I care about is just what happens in his room. There's so much more to my son's life. Like he goes to school, he plays baseball, you know, he rides his bike, he has friends. As a father, I care about every part of his life. That's why I ask him how his day at school was. That's why I assistant coach the baseball team. That's why we like ride bikes together. That's why I play video games with him and read Dogman books, even though it's imposed on me and I wouldn't naturally read Dogman, but he's like, Dad, you have to read book number 2. It's so funny. I'm like, I totally will do that, even though I don't want to. Because I care about every part of my son's life. Not because I want to control it, but because I love him. When you put God in a box and you think all he wants from you is your religion, you're not missing out on just how he wants to control all your life. That's not what he wants to do. You're missing out on how his love and his goodness wants to spill over into parts of your life you never even knew were possible. God is a good father. And when Jesus says things like this, you must love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all your mind. He wants the whole person, not just the religious part. When he makes big claims like, if any of you want to be my follower, you have to give up your own way. You have to lay down your life and take up your cross and follow me. Jesus says some pretty radical claims where he's not just saying, I just want you to be a little bit more religious, a little bit more spiritual. He's saying, I care about everything. Because I'm like the Father who loves everything that is involved in his son's life. The conflicts he has with his siblings, the dreams that get crushed, the life phases we have to go through when we move. I care about all of it. And Jesus is saying, that's what's different about me from religion. I don't just want a piece of your life, I want all of it. It's because I love you. If you think that Jesus wants anything less than all of your life, you've greatly misunderstood what he claimed to be. He claimed to be God, and he claimed it so much that people put him to death, although he says, I give my life up, no one can take it from me. People knew what he was claiming. People said that he did things like heal the sick, cast out demons. People claim that he rose from the dead, and I believe all those things. Jesus didn't claim to be just another guy. He claimed to have divine authority over all of heaven and over earth and our entire lives. And so it's absolutely appropriate that we would give him every part of our life because he's worthy of it. Now that feels super religious, but you got to play it out in the context of a loving relationship, all of life. The last thing Jesus offers that is different from religion is this. He came to forgive and accept us before we became people of love. Jesus comes to forgive and accept us before we become people of love. This is actually the one that my friends who are not so sure about Jesus, this is the one they get hung up on. Mostly because, you know, after I have many conversations and we kind of wear it out to death, kind of where they end up landing is, well, can't I just be a good person without following Jesus? You know, if everything I'm offering on the table, like I can't label myself as that, I can't buy into all that, they kind of land, I still want to be a good person. I don't like want to wreck other people's lives. I want to do the best I can. Isn't that enough? Isn't that what Jesus would really want anyway? Is that what Jesus wants? Did Jesus come to help make us better people, to make us good people? No. Jesus came to rescue. Jesus came to forgive people who were broken. Jesus came to accept people who couldn't make themselves acceptable. Jesus came to do all that on the basis of what he has done, not on the basis of what we could do. And so, no, you can totally be a good person without following Jesus. In fact, there's probably a lot of people who don't follow Jesus who live better lives than some Christians do. That's not why Jesus came. You know, the standard for God's holiness, the idea that his definition of good and perfect, who Jesus was, is that 100% of the time, for 100% of your life, you do what is best for yourself, for others, and for God. That you make decisions, you live in motivations and attitudes that allow the best flourishing of your own life, the flourishing of others, and that align with God's heart and mind and his design and desires. And none of us do that. You know, as we've been driving to Columbus, I took my kids to a soccer game this week. And so they don't know much about Columbus. I'm trying to show them fun stuff. And so we go down there and we go to this Columbus Crew game and we go into the stadium. And my 5-year-old is just like, wow, I have never been in a building this big. And I'm like, it's so fun. And he's like, Dad, is this where we're going to live? And I'm like, no, buddy. We are not going to live in the Columbus Crew Stadium. And we went and looked at a house the other day, right? And we're like, this is where we're going to live. And you know what? There's a big difference between a house and a stadium. There's a big difference between a house and a skyscraper, right? We know that. Compared to us, we're like, holy cow, that skyscraper is huge. That building is huge. And we could say the house is small. And so you can compare your life. You may genuinely be the skyscraper. You might be agnostic, non-religious, atheist, and your life may be so much better than most of us Christians, us followers of Jesus. But when God looks at our lives, it's a little bit like saying, which is further from the sun, the skyscraper or the house? Both are pretty far away from the sun. The skyscraper doesn't have that much up on the house. When we compare next to each other, sure, people can live better lives. They don't have to follow Jesus. But that's not what Jesus came to do. Jesus came to offer you something different. Most religions do that. Most religions say, we're going to tell you how to be a good person. We're going to give you rules for it. We're going to give things you can do. And if you're a good enough person, you can be forgiven and accepted. That's what normal religious thinking says, is that I'm going to be a good person. I'm going to be a loving person. I'm going to do whatever that is defined as in my religion. And what I hope that is if I do that enough, I can be forgiven. I can be accepted. I can make it in. And Jesus flips it completely on its head, and it's totally backwards. And he says, there's actually nothing you could do that would make you good enough, so I'm going to forgive you on the basis of what I have done, and I'm going to accept you as you are. And that's going to change your life so radically, you're actually going to become more of a person of love over time. But it's going to be because of what I've done in you, not because of what you're doing to work toward that. Does that make sense? Do you understand, at least why it's different? Jesus is offering something totally different than what religious thinking tries to offer us. It's a misunderstanding of grace when we think that the things we can do can actually bring us closer to God because God has pursued you already. He's pursued you regardless. Paul, when he was talking to the people in Athens, in the unknown God, he lived a very religious life. He actually wrote about it a little bit. And when he looked at his religious life, he said this. He said, as a Christ follower, as a Christian, we rely on what Christ Jesus has done for us. We put no confidence in human effort, though I could have confidence in my own effort if anyone could. Indeed, if others have reason for confidence in their own effort, I have even more. He's saying the whole premise of being a follower of Jesus is that it's not enough. But Paul says, if there is something that could have been enough, I would have hit that mark. And he goes on to list a bunch of things about his religious background and how he disciplined himself. He said, I was circumcised when I was 8 days old. I'm a pure-blooded citizen of Israel and a member of the tribe of Benjamin, a real Hebrew, if there ever was one. His ethnicity, his upbringing, his family lineage. He was like, I came from the right, cloth. I was cut from the right cloth. I was a member of the Pharisees who demanded the strictest obedience to the Jewish law. We saw that these were the highest of high leaders, teachers. They knew it all. They had education, training. He disciplined himself in one of the highest schools of training. He said, I was so zealous that I harshly persecuted the church. People who were against us, I went after them and I took them out. And as for righteousness, I obeyed the law without fault. I did it better than anyone else. Why did Paul walk away from his religion? He says this, I once thought these things were valuable. They were what made him. But now I consider them worthless because of what Christ has done. What Paul found was something different than religion. He already had religion. And his religion was not enough. And what Jesus offered was so compelling and so different that he gave his life to something new. And you might view that as a new religion, but he viewed that as a person. He believed in Jesus, and he gave his life to him. Because Jesus came to do reconciling and transforming work in our lives. It's not about what we do, it's about what he did. Jesus wants to get you to this point where you can say, it's not about what I have done, it's about what Christ has done. And that applies to everyone in this room and to everyone online who is very religious. Your religion is not enough. How well you do at the Christian life or being a Christian or being spiritual is not enough. And it also applies for everyone in this room who's non-religious. It applies to those in this room who feel maybe they've failed too much in life. You can't be good enough and you can't fail enough to miss out on what Christ has done for you. I am not moving to Columbus to keep championing a religion. I'm not risking my family on that. It's not worth it. But I will follow Jesus wherever he takes me. That's not a pastor thing. That's a Christ follower thing. Laying down your life and saying, God, you are good. You want what's best for me. You want to rescue me. You want all of my life because you love me the way a father does. You want me to lay down my pride. You want me to lay down my shame. And you just want me to find you. Jesus wants you to get to this point. And so if you've made Jesus about religion, I think we've missed it a little bit. Now, of course, following Jesus means you have beliefs about God and the universe that shape your life, no doubt. But we all do. If you make him about this religion where you have to earn it, where he just wants you to live in this box, you put God in a box and just come on Sunday, where he's taking away your life instead of giving it to you, you are missing what Jesus came to offer you. If you're living in the experience of church hurt or in the history of what people have done in the name of religion, you're missing Jesus because he pushed back against all of that. Jesus wants you to believe this unknown God, right, that you've been looking for. And you haven't wanted to put a label onto it, or you've been afraid to lean in and be all in with him because you're afraid of what it's going to do to your life. You want to know what Paul said to the men of Athens as he kept talking to them? He said, this God that you think is unknown, he says, is not that far off from you. This God is not that far off from you. He is not hard to find. He created you. He loves you. He is good. He wants to intervene in your life. He wants you to hear him. He wants you to experience life. He wants to be found. He doesn't want to be the unknown God. And so, if you're there, you're longing for something, you're looking for something like this, but it couldn't be religion. Might it be Jesus? He's totally worth it. Religion can't save us, but Jesus can. I'm going to invite the band out and just give us a little bit of space to pray through this. So if you wouldn't mind just praying with me. Father, we first just want to come and ask that we could see you for who you really are. Because it's so easy, God, whether you're a pastor or a churchgoer or someone who's hurt by the church or doesn't buy into any of this, God, to just miss who you are. You do not change based upon what we think or what people do. And so I just pray that you would open up our eyes to see who you really are. That's what I want most of all, God, is that for those who are stuck with that barrier, they're afraid to lean into you because they're afraid of what it might mean and what it might do for their life. God, I pray that they would see that you want to give them life. You want to rescue them, and you want to be a part of their life so much, every part of it. Help us to hear that as good. Help us not to be afraid to walk with you or to trust you or to give our lives to you. I pray that you would do that even now, God, that you would draw people to yourself. They would see that you are not hard to find. I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Always stand together as we sing and respond to God's great invitation to us.
Could it really be this easy? That you love me like you say you do. I've got years and years of striving, when there's nothing left to prove. Could it really be this simple? Your kindness changes everything. It's like your grace is on a mission to tear down my religion. You're all I really need. Hallelujah. All of this time, how you love me, how you love me. Hallelujah, it blows my mind. How you love me, how you love me. Sing that again, Amazing Grace. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I am found, was blind, but now I see. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I am found, was blind, but now I The amazing thing about your grace is it's you who found us. It's not us that found you. That you reached out to us and you died for us while we were still sinners. The life that you offer was bought at a price that we could never pay. We couldn't pay it for ourselves, and we can't repay you. Lord, that free gift. But even though we need it to be free, and because we have nothing to offer you back, is hard to accept. We want to think that there's something that we can do. We can meet you halfway, or we can try really hard. But like a loving Father, it's you invite us into that relationship and to be a part of the family. We just have to rest in that, just to accept your grace, to accept the position that we've been given as adopted, as sons and daughters, as your children. And just accept that you are a good God. You are an excellent Father with a pure heart. So God, I just pray for that kind of faith. Pray for that kind of love in us, that we can just simply learn to accept that, learn to accept your invitation to call us to be in your family. And Lord, anything that we do that's from that, anything that we do to love other people or to pursue you, Lord, to be from that position of already belonging, already forgiven, already clean, because that's what you have called us. Not from trying to earn our way, not trying to build up some sort of religion. So God, we pray for that, to see you as you truly are, to hear your words, the way that you've spoken them, to see that invitation for what it is, to a loving, eternal relationship. We thank you for this, Jesus. It's in your name we pray. It's in your name we are gathered here today. Amen. Remember those walls that we called sin and shame? They were like prisons that we couldn't escape. But he came and he died.
fantastic. Just to remember what a great God that we have and what that invitation to following him really is all about. It's been such a great time spending this with all of you. God bless you guys. Have a great rest of your weekend. Hang around, meet somebody new, or connect with some old friends. This time is yours. All right.